Hello there, and welcome to Beyond the Surface, where the saying to be seen is to be understood comes to life. I want to begin by first honouring the traditional custodians of the land we live and work on. I live and work on Gundungurra land, and I acknowledge the traditional landowners of my guests near and far. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, and cultures of our First Nations people. The land below my feet is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. I'm no stranger to the profound journey of pain, grief, anger, and heartbreak that often accompanies the loss of church, community, faith, and the unwinding of our core beliefs. In the midst of this, though, I found healing in the stories shared by others who walked a similar path to me. Here, in the warmth of these digital walls, I want you to feel at home. This is a space where your memories and your story is not just acknowledged, but deeply seen and believed. So kick back, relax, and let's embark on a journey where your story is not just heard, but embraced. I want to welcome you to a community where storytelling is a powerful force. This is Beyond the Surface. Welcome, Maggie. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me here. This is so exciting.
I'm so excited. We were just saying off recording that we are like little sister podcasts at the moment, and it's so
Yeah.
exciting. I love it.
Yes. We're
And
on parallel podcast journeys and I love it.
I know, and I'm just like, the more stories, the more conversations around this, the better at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I am loving sort of drip feeding the Australians throughout my podcast because there are not enough of us out there talking. But we need to balance that out with some American tones in the podcast. Whereabouts in America are you, Maggie?
Yeah, I'm outside of Boston, but I grew up in upstate New York.
Ah,
Yeah, like smack dab in the middle of the state. But yeah, now I'm outside of Boston.
right.
So,
Okay.
but I have no Boston accent to give you.
I was going to say there isn't, I mean, that is an accent that I tend to recognize.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm like upstate New York, so I've got no good Boston. I mean, I could fake it, but
Yeah, you probably could.
but for this, in the spirit of authenticity, I'll
Mm,
leave my New York accent. My
amazing.
upstate, yeah.
So, Maggie, where does your story start?
Yeah, well, Joy in your first episode put it so well. It's like I guess it starts with my parents, right? Like it always does. So I grew up in the church forever for me.
Mhm.
But my parents were raised Catholic and um I think well, my mom found the church through a Billy Graham crusade. Is that an American thing or is that worldwide?
Well, I think the Crusades are American, but
Okay.
everybody knows Billy Graham.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my parents were like born again Billy Graham
Mhm.
crusade people. Um, and yeah, so it wasn't like this thing that was like generational like it is for a lot of people. I, you know, my parents joined and then brought us to the church, me and my sister. But for me, it was my whole life, right? Like I was raised in it from the time that I can remember. My sister has memories of the Catholic Church, but um, I only remember the evangelical church that we went to. So yeah, my church was it was non-denominational, but that, is kind of its own denomination, really. And so it was like fundamentalist, very patriarchal.
Mhm.
Um, and it kind of like depended on what the church leaders at the time were into, like what
Yeah.
theology we ended up getting. And so when I was in high school, I've said this before, but when I was in high school, it was like very much John Piper, predestination, kind of Calvinist
Mhm.
ideology or theology. And so that's what really stuck with me. Like growing up, when I was a kid, I remember like having very serious fear of like hell and the rapture. But
Mm.
then in high school, when I was kind of like piecing it together and trying to think about it more intellectually.
Yeah.
Um, it came with a lot of like predestination and total
Mm,
depravity. And then, yeah, and a lot of purity culture. I grew up going to music festivals where we would hear purity culture speakers.
mm,
I grew up going to and working at summer camps where, counselors taught us purity culture messages, where I was a counselor teaching purity culture
mm,
messages, and went to a Christian college. And so, yeah, I really did the whole thing. Like
mm.
I was in it for the long haul.
Yeah, all in.
Yeah. As,
Yeah.
as we all are, or
Yeah.
so many of us are.
Yeah, I have said in many conversations that the people who we talk to who are deconstructing the hardest or who have religious trauma are not the nominal once in a blue moon Sunday churchgoers. They're the people who were
Hmm.
all in, who were,
Hmm.
every part of their life was connected to the church and to their faith. Um,
Right.
what was it like for you as a young person being raised in purity culture?
Ooh, it's terrible, but you don't realize it when you're in it,
Yeah.
or at least I didn't. It was just like, yes, this is of course the right thing to do because
Mm,
they teach you that it's keeping you safe. They teach you that it's keeping you pure, which is not just like pure sexually, but to be pure sexually means that you are overall pure, which means you can be presented to God in the right way, right?
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I guess I sort of felt like I guess this is like true with a lot of church teachings that you sort of feel superior because you have the right way. And so at the time, I think I felt like purity culture was helping me. It was um, keeping me from losing a piece of my soul, which, they told us would happen if you were sexually active outside of marriage. And so I don't think I viewed it as like a terrible thing, but what it taught me to do is to be afraid of my body, to
Mm,
not trust my body, to really be at war with my body, or like maybe that's dramatic, but that my body was an enemy of
yeah.
myself, and that's just not true, which we know now. But yeah, it really taught me that, and to be afraid of in addition to my body, to be afraid of my sexuality at
Mm,
all, um, and anything to do with that. And so, yeah, that's been quite a process to come out of that.
yeah, it is. I've found, particularly for female identifying people, that purity culture really, really reinforced that disconnect with your body.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I mean, I think that the church tends to do that anyway, with that your body is, flesh and worldly and sinful. But it is also really ironic because your body is a temple. And so
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, so am I supposed to love it or am I supposed to hate it?
Yeah, the cognitive dissonance there is
Yeah,
so tricky.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What was it like for you in those sort of young adulthood years,
While I was in purity culture still, or once I was out?
wherever you want to take us?
I guess let's start in it. Um, I don't, I'm not sure. I think I mean, this sounds kind of arrogant. I was good at it, right? Like I was good at following the rules.
Yeah.
I was afraid of being wrong or bad
Mhm.
because that comes with going to hell.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I followed all the rules. And so I think I felt good. Like I don't think I knew what feeling good was, but like I think I felt like I was doing it right. And so like I could check off a box and there's something really satisfying about that.
Mm.
Um,
You're
but then
playing the good
coming
Christian girl.
right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then coming out of it, that was that was like Well, I think I'm having a hard time answering because I think I'm still coming out of it, right? And I think I've undone it logically for myself, but as I kind of piece through my story and learn more about myself just in general, not even church related things, just learning more about myself, I see it coming back up. And like, um, there was a time, like a therapy session recently where my therapist said something along the lines of, she thought it, not she thought it was a neutral statement, but like, she was kind of like reiterating something back to me that I had said. And she
Hmm.
said, yeah, like you're not an object in sex. And I was like, I'm not an object in sex. And
Hmm.
it was like it hit me like all the object lessons, the chewed up gum, the duct tape, the flour, any
Mm.
whatever object lesson you want to pick for that day. They all kind of hit me. And so yeah, sometimes I'm like, whoosh, I'm past that. And then sometimes it's still, you feel it in your body, which is
Yeah.
how
I mean,
processing works. But yeah.
yeah, I will often say to my clients, healing is not a destination. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that we go through. And David Hayward, the Naked Pastor, said to me in a recent episode that deconstruction is a way of life. It's not an
Mm-hmm.
end point. You don't just reach it and you live there.
Mm-hmm.
You live deconstruction. And when you have been raised with such, rigidity,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to unravel in a quick manner. It is,
Right.
it's going to pop up at different times. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
ongoing.
Yeah, and I think deconstruction lasts for forever in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end because I hope that I'm always taking apart things that I believe to look at them and to examine them and
Mm,
to see what fits still and to see what doesn't. And so I think the skill that I've kind of built up in deconstructing my religious beliefs, I think also serves me in so many other places too.
mm,
And yeah, so I think deconstruction is forever,
yeah.
it's a lifestyle. I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like an MLM person. Like it's
Yeah.
a lifestyle, it's not a one-time thing.
Um, okay, so how did that period of time of purity culture and, predestination, all of that sort of doctrine, how did that impact your personal relationship with God?
Oh, someone hasn't asked me about my personal relationship with God in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, not since the accountability chats that you used to have.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Can you repeat the question again? Sorry, I got lost in the
That's okay. How
yeah.
did that purity culture, predestination, John Piper type doctrine, how did that impact your personal relationship with God?
It's interesting. I have a lot of like, and I should probably process this more, but I have a lot of memories of like being frozen. Like I felt like I'm stuck. I don't know. Like it's like, okay, I'm just taking it all in. Like I'm looking around, I'm taking it all in. And I think looking back, it's like there was like this deep fear inside of me that if you do something wrong, when you do something wrong, because we
Mm,
are sinners, we are bad, we are inherently bad, is what we learned. Um, when we do something wrong, we will like the punishment is death, right?
yeah.
And so we will go to hell. Like that is the logical next step. And of course, you won't if you accept Jesus into your heart and have a relationship with him. But I think that these doctrines kind of kept me frozen in fear for a long time.
Mm,
And I think that my relationship with God then, like no healthy relationship is based around fear.
mm,
Like there's something unhealthy. There's some kind of like abuse of power maybe.
yeah.
And so when I think back to my relationship with God at that time, it felt very sincere to me. And I think there was a lot of like grief and losing that for me. Um, But looking back, I can see that it wasn't actually healthy. And I was in this sort of like, I owe it to God kind of thing, or like I am making up for these ways that I am broken or that I have been sinful. Um, yeah,
And there is always this like desperate need to please him, right?
right. Yeah.
Like, which I think anytime, if we put that into a human-human relationship, any sort of desperate need to please someone, I mean, that is not a kind of codependent relationship you want, right?
No, right. Yeah, I feel like our relationship with God, the way that it was taught to us, the way that it should be,
Yeah.
sets us up for accepting abuse in relationships.
Mhm.
And, you're always owing it to somebody. You could never do better than God. God is taking care of you and you're lost without him.
Yeah.
And viewing this kind of relationship as love and like the purest form of love, I think set us up for accepting abuse in other relationships. And I
Yeah.
feel lucky that like I have not been in abusive relationships, but I think that there are so many people coming out of the church who have been,
Mm,
and who were taught to accept it because that was what our relationship with God was like. Not that it has to be, but
mm,
the way that I was taught about God, it is.
yeah.
I don't want to discredit other people's
Mm,
belief in God, and if it's different for other people and healthy for other people, like I think there are certainly healthier ways to believe in God and to have a relationship with him, but the way that it was taught to me was very unhealthy.
yeah, absolutely. And so, because when we say relationship, I want to clarify we're not just talking about romantic or intimate relationships, because often that relationship with God, if it is taught in that sort of power dynamic, owing, pleasing sort of spectrum, it sets us up to make excuses for the leaders in the church as well, and for the harm that
Hmm.
might be done to us by people who are supposed to be respectable Christian leaders.
Yeah.
And so we make excuses for
Yeah.
those people because um, they're only human, or they're doing it in love or whatever it
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
Um, did you
Yeah.
see that spiritual bypassing as part of the church that you were in?
Um, well, yeah, two things are coming up for me right now. One is that my church loved a good like redemption story, like a man who has some kind of addiction problem,
Oh,
finding God. He comes
yeah.
to church and now like he is not that he can do no wrong, but he's on the right path, so
Mm,
we accept anything else that comes with it.
yes.
So there, I know were men in my church growing up who were the abuser in relationships, and I
Mm,
know past my pastor knew about it, and I know that both the abuser and the person being abused were allowed to be in church. And it was like, but he's found Jesus, right? So we can look past it because he's making his life better. And if he still messes up sometimes, it's okay because
yeah.
he's on the right path, or he's working on it. We all make mistakes, right? Like they accept the wrong kind of mistakes. Like some mistakes are so bad that you're going to go to hell. And
Hmm.
other ones are like, well, they're trying, right? And it's like, I think we put these on the wrong like kind of hierarchy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
There
I
is,
I
but
gotta
there is no hierarchy of sin, remember, Maggie? Like there isn't.
right.
I
That's
mean,
so true.
there's no hierarchy.
Yes.
And yet there is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there is a
Yeah.
definite hierarchy. I mean, what is it with churches and loving a redemption story? It
Oh
is
my
so
God.
common. I mean, I mentioned this in the episode that I did about my story, but when I had like a 2-year hiatus where I left and came back, but
Mm-hmm.
when I came back, I was publicly stated as the prodigal daughter has returned. And it's like, what is it with churches and redemption stories? It's almost like, um, wanting to sort of use it as it's like the hallmark of like God answers prayers. It's like this is a
Yes. Yeah.
literal representation that we are the right way, that this is the
Hmm.
truth, and this is the
Hmm.
only way to healing and happiness and wholeness.
Yeah. It's,
Um,
it's like they could like take a clip and like use it as a commercial, you know? It's like, look what
yeah.
we can do in the church.
Yes. It's like, those commercials where they show people like who can't clean, who are trying to use this like dodgy product. Do you have those infomercials in America?
I
And
don't
then
know, but I love this. Keep going.
so there's like infomercials where like they'll show really, really dramatic versions of someone trying to clean with this like old broken down mop, and then they'll cut to this like, but look what we have. And it's like this brand spanking new mop, but it's like this person in the original thing is like it's so ridiculous and dramatic that it's like, but we just need to make it so black and white, so polar opposite to make this seem like it is the best thing since sliced bread, that you
Hmm.
must have it.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's kind of like that. That's what I think,
Yeah.
because, they will use things like addiction and abuse and, homelessness, or, all of the worst things that come to mind, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
use them as the examples that God is good because he has brought them healing. And
Yes. He's cleaned up the
yeah,
dirtiest mess, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what led you out of the church?
Oh my God.
How long have you been out?
Yeah, a good question. Well, let me talk about what led me out and then
Okay.
because I don't know where you start. Like, I've been out of the church for this long, you know? I'm like, I don't know. Here's where I
Yeah.
questioned this, and here's where I questioned this. But
Mm,
um, so after high school, I went to a Christian college. And I think it was there, like if I went back now, I obviously wouldn't go back to this Christian college.
mm,
Um, but I think at the time it was really good for me. I think it met me where I was. And it helped me to see that there were other ways of being a Christian. You didn't have to believe in predestination. There were many people that did, but there were many people that
mm,
didn't.
yeah.
Um, you could believe that men and women were closer to equal, at least. You could believe that, gay people had some rights, right? Like
Mm,
you could find like a less bad version.
yeah.
Um, and so I think that helped me kind of expand my view of Christianity. And so I did that through college. And I think I also like looking back at high school me, I think I had a lot of questions, but I was afraid to ask them because, you know, you're not supposed to. And it's okay to have a crisis of belief as long as you come back to the church. And so you can ask the questions, but you can't really sincerely ask the questions because you can't actually risk not having an answer that leads you back to the church.
Yeah.
And so I think when I was in college, I wanted to find more answers about Christianity and about faith in general. So I added a biblical studies minor. It's a music major, but with a biblical studies minor, so that I could just like learn more about it and kind of see what people are talking about in like the scholarly world about the Bible.
Mm,
And really, in doing that, it kind of undid a lot of it for me. And I remember my Old Testament professor saying at one point, like, a lot of people become a biblical studies major and then they are no longer Christian. And I was like, okay, well, then I have to figure out what that is. And if
yeah.
there's like, if there's, I don't know if there's something to that, then like I either, like, I want to know what that is. Like, am I missing something?
Mm,
And so, yeah, a lot of the biblical studies classes, I think, kind of not necessarily pushed me out right away, but they helped me see religion for what I think it is now, which is a, a system of beliefs that can help bring people together. Like, I think that's why it was created. I don't know. This could be totally wrong. Those are my thoughts,
Yeah.
but um yeah, like a system of beliefs that help bring people together. And I think for a time, they did keep us kind of in these people groups that helped us survive longer. Like it gave us this um um like community in a way that I'm not even talking about like community in your church, but like community of people groups, like ancient people groups, you know? And yeah, so I think I was able to view it as like, oh, the Bible is a collection of myths and
Mm,
stories to me. And it helped this people group feel connected and survive and be together in a way, just like all these other myths and stories at the
mm,
time helped people feel connected and, give them like answers to things that they didn't understand. And so now we know a little bit more and we can know that they're myths. And so we're like, what? So for me, I was like, what does religion give me then? Like, what am I here for? And for a while it was like God is at the center, and out of that comes like love and acceptance and caring for people and all of that. And that was in my kind of reshaping of Christianity, sort of like, okay, women can be equal and like LGBTQ people can be respected and loved. Like this seems so basic, but this is progressive Christianity.
yeah.
And so yeah, God was at the center and all of these things kind of came out of it. And eventually I was like, I think it's all the other things like love and acceptance and humanity that are actually at the center for me. And if God helps me do that, great. But if he doesn't, I actually don't really need that. And so then I kind of stopped going to church, and it was like a real like slow fade. Like I was like poster child for like what not to do in terms of like slow fade and backsliding.
Uh,
And yeah, and then processing kind of hit caught up with me, but we can get to that in a minute. But yeah, that was kind of my journey out.
yeah, it is so common that as soon as people start to delve deeper, that they don't realize that delving deeper might actually lead them out of their belief system as they knew it,
Mm-hmm.
at least.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if we think about belief systems historically, they have evolved. I mean, at one point, there was Norse mythology and there was like, people worshipped Zeus as if Zeus was real and, things like that. And so it's like, our like different belief systems have evolved over time and they
Mm-hmm.
will continue to evolve as well. Um, but yeah, it is not an uncommon thing that I hear.
Yeah.
It's like once you start pulling at that thread of the garment, you either have a choice to chop it off, which I think many of us did for so long. We just kept chopping
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, it's not okay to ask questions unless they're the right kind of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, we keep pulling and the thread just starts to unravel.
Yeah. I remember saying to my sister at one point, my sister is also out of the church, and she's been, yeah, super helpful for me. She's older than me. She left sooner than me. And so we've had really good conversations about all of this. And at one point when I was still in it,
Mm,
but confused and she was out, I said like, I I think I know that it is all fake to me. Like I believe that it's all fake, but I'm not ready to like admit that yet. And
mm,
so it's like I could know it but not know it. And I just let myself sit in that space for a little while. Because I think it's really jarring to lose everything that you believed in. I mean, it is it is everything. And so yeah, it's just really jarring and hard to let it go. Um, Even if you know for a while it's not real, it's like, but I'm just gonna cut it off and just like leave the hole right there and not pull the thread anymore.
yeah. And it's scary. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
scary because you don't know. There is still a part of you. I know for me, there was still a part of me that was going, yeah, but what if? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what if I am wrong? Like, what if I am, making something out of nothing? Um, and what if God is real and what I'm about to do screws up eternity for me?
Right. Because the cost of being wrong is an eternity in hell.
Yeah.
So like, oh, what if isn't like, I don't know,
What if I
what
choose the wrong
if
dinner?
I choose the wrong meal? Exactly. It is
Yeah.
like, what if I
Mhm.
spend eternity, which is like a time measurement that none of us can understand, right?
No.
Like,
Yeah.
especially like a child. I'm sorry. Kids don't even know. Like, I teach young children, and you like music is done in 10 minutes, and they're like, how long is 10 minutes? Like, of course you don't know what 10 minutes is. You're a child. Uh,
Mhm.
and we were supposed to know what eternity was. That's just bananas to me. But anyway,
Mhm.
um, yeah, the cost of being wrong is that you spend this unfathomable amount of time burning in hell. Just pretty messed up
Yeah.
and scary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you go sort of reconciling that fear of hell whilst sort of going towards what you found you were now believing?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's so interesting because I think I had fear of hell for a long time and probably still do to some well, like I don't in my head, but probably it comes up at some points in my body. Um, but I couldn't tell you like here's what I did to move through it, except that like therapy, like trauma-informed therapy.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of like sitting with the flashbacks and sitting with the hell dreams um and like really, with a trusted therapist, like really having her kind of push on like what what is the fear here, and you get to it again and again and it's like and the fear is hell. And then to just like kind of see that is like the start of overcoming it, I think, or at least it felt like it was for me, to see what it is. And then, yeah, I don't know, just to keep just to keep working at it in therapy is like all that I have, I think. Um, and also to like acknowledge the small things. Like sometimes I would have dreams where I would like kind of pull, not like pull myself out of hell, but um, like fix something in church related things, like somebody's come or like defend myself or like defend my family in a way. And those dreams, like kind of leaning into those, I think helped me see ways that like my actual internal psyche is saying like you are free from that, and like
Yeah.
you can protect yourself from that, and honoring that and acknowledging that, I think was really helpful in helping me feel like I'm my own authority rather than some higher power that has power to send me to hell. Like it sort of took the power away from this imaginary being to me and gave the power back to me. And I think in doing that, it kind of loosened up the hell fears for me a little bit.
Yeah. And that self-trust and self-determination is such a learned skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially
Mm-hmm.
when, you are taught not to trust your own feelings and your own judgment and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did your newfound beliefs impact your relationship with your parents?
Oh, good question. My parents are, this is my like company line about my parents. My parents are wonderful, wonderful people, and they are on a journey of their own that is not mine to share, but I am really proud of them. And I think like at their core and on the surface too, but more importantly, at their core, they are really, really wonderful people, and they found church to help us and to give our family structure. And in my sister leaving and in me leaving, I'm sure that there was some grief for them. I don't know. This is my
Mm.
my guess, but I'm sure that there was some grief for them. But I think my parents have always valued family over theology, and even even their decision to be in church and to believe this theology that they did believe was a way to bring our family together. And so it's like family is first. So I think there's been kind of a relearning of who I am, but it that's been true for me too, like for me to relearn who I am. And um so yeah, we've had a really nice relationship, and I feel really, really lucky and privileged that I am in a position where I have really safe parents and safe family. And I know that. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I try to use my voice to share and to start a podcast and collect other people's stories, because I'm not worried about losing my parental, these parental relationships. And that's not true for everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm. It is a hard space to be in for a lot of people when, their loss of faith and loss of church comes with loss of family as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
we are both, I was not, my parents, my family were not church people. So I
Mm,
also did not have that risk when I
mm-hmm.
started deconstructing and things like that. So,
Yeah. Sorry. And it was certainly like, I don't want to discredit like the fear that I had in coming out of church. Like they
yeah.
were very much still in church when I left. And so I also, I also understand and felt the feeling like I'm going to disappoint them. Um, but I think that disappointment, like there is grief in that for sure, but it is not the same kind of grief as you're going to lose them. Yeah. And so I don't know. I just say that to say like it's not that like family was like an easy, I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about anything. Um, but yeah, they have been a safe place.
Mm. Okay, so I'm going to flip one of the previous questions into a different
Okay.
context.
Okay.
What did the process of deconstruction mean for your personal relationship with God?
Ooh, okay, hold on. You might have to repeat it again because the personal relationship with God just like makes all these things bubble up for me. Okay, hold
Uh,
on. I think I've got it. What did my deconstruction process do to my personal relationship with God?
yeah.
Oh, well, it ended it.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I don't believe in a God. I and that was really hard. Like I was somebody who took it really seriously, and I like prayed a lot. I journaled like prayer journals a lot. And so when I lost the idea of God for myself, I think I really like grieved a relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was really hard and sad and lonely. And it felt like this constant thing that was there for me always was gone.
Mm.
Um, and that was really scary. Like you lose a safety net in a way. You don't have this thing to fall back to. Like when you feel worried, you pray. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that was really, really sad and hard. But I think it also, in losing my relationship with God, I was left with like, what do I do with these prayer journals? What do I do with them? What did they mean? They still were an experience that was valid for me. And so what does that mean? So in looking back at those and kind of reading through them, when I finally, got the courage to like look back at my journals, I saw that I was really talking to myself the whole time. And it was just like a way for me to process the day, process my anxieties, process my fears. And I think in that way it was really healthy and helpful for me. And I didn't have to lose that. Like I'm still here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it was grief at first, and then it was really empowering because I realized it was my own. voice that I could look to. So I think it gave me a kind of a sense of self-trust and learning to trust my intuition and my own voice that I didn't have before.
Mm.
Um, so I like to say that God is a woman and that woman is me.
I
Um,
know, and I love it.
yeah, so I lost God, but then I kind of found him again, you know? God is a
Yeah,
woman and it's me and I am still here for me and I always will be. Like I can't lose myself.
yeah.
So that has been a really beautiful, wonderful process. But it also came with a lot of grief,
Mm,
for sure.
yeah. And so, what is it like deconstructing so far online? Because you are very
Mm.
open about your deconstruction and real on social media. What is that like?
Yeah, I started the account because I realized, well, for a couple things. One, there was all this anger coming up in therapy, which was really healthy and taught me that there was something wrong and I needed to get out.
Yeah.
And and then there was this anger that was coming up that was very protective and kind of like protective for people who are in the church and wanting to get out but not knowing how, or out of the church but feeling lost, like feeling in that really lonely place. And so that's what kind of inspired me to start the Instagram account was like I I want to help people know that like it's okay on the other side. Like it's safe. Like we were taught that it is not safe when you leave and it's like the world is a really scary place. And it is, but like it was in the church too, right? And so you can be safe and healthy outside of the church. And yeah, so I think I just wanted to, I don't know, like share my own story so that other people felt less alone. That's my like whole thing is like you're not alone. There's a lot of us, but you
Mm,
don't know who to talk to in the moment and like when you're in it because you can't tell your church friends because you don't want to you don't want them to start holding you accountable and discredit your doubts and your fears and can't talk to people outside of church because they really don't get it. I mean you can, but you in that moment it's like there is nobody I can talk to. And so to find that space online for me was really helpful. And so I thought I can again, like I'm in a place where my family is safe. I'm not at risk of like losing people, so I can put my story out there. It was a stretch for me for sure. Um, but it felt like something that was kind of within my reach or within my
yeah.
comfort challenge zone maybe. um and I think it's been so helpful for me, like I think it's been helpful for other people, but it's been so helpful for me because I've been able to own my own story more. Like it's mine now. It's not something that happened to me. It's something that I experienced and lived through and worked through and have come out the other side with this like deconstruction kind of woven into who I am and woven into my story. And so I think, yeah, being online has helped me kind of piece my own story together.
Yeah. And
That's a
so
really long answer.
that's okay. I love long answers. What has been one of the most poignant moments for your deconstruction story so far?
Hmm. Probably starting the Instagram account. Like that was, I think, a turning point for me where I was finally ready to talk about it
Yeah.
and to acknowledge it. And for a while I just like didn't look at my church experience. I was just like, okay, I don't go and I'm just not going to look at it. And if I don't look, then it never happened and I can just move on with my life. And then, like I said, like I said earlier, it's sort of like the the processing you didn't do just like hits you in the face.
Yeah.
And that's when I started going to therapy for now what I know as religious trauma and working through that. And um yeah, I think finally being able to say, like, this is what I've been through and this is my experience was really helpful. And I think that was the point where I felt comfortable doing that. Again, it was a stretch, but when I finally started like owning my story and being able to say to people, like, oh, yeah, this is how I grew up and this is something that I have worked through rather than just like, please don't ask me about like pop culture in the 90s because I don't know, you know?
Oh, yeah. And has there been something in particular that's been really difficult to relearn? I'm wondering, was that purity culture stuff really hard to sort of like unravel?
Yeah, purity culture definitely. I think, like I said before, I think I'm still working
Yeah.
through that for sure. And some days it feels less heavy than others, right? And some days I feel like I'm more through it than other days. You're sort of in this kind of back and forth sometimes. But yeah, I think my relationship with my body and sex has been something that's just kind of hard. And I think it's hard for a lot of us coming out of purity culture. And that's definitely lived with me. I think my my relationship with not just my body, but like myself and my intuition, I think was something that continued to come up for a long time. And you know, I finally feel like I'm in a place where I can say God is a woman and that woman is me, but that took me a long time to get there. And I think I say it so strongly I because it was hard for me to believe it and to get there and to trust myself. And um yeah, so I think it's something that maybe could could look like it comes easily, but that was actually one that was like really hard to believe and to
Mm.
trust.
Yeah. And so, where does your sense of spirituality land now? You've sort of mentioned your intuition, and I love the God is a woman quote. But where does that sense of spirituality land for you?
I think I always say spirituality is a little like the word is kind of like spooky to me. And I guess yeah, I believe in like my own intuition and my own
Mm.
gut. And other than that, I don't really know. Like maybe like we're all connected.
Yeah.
Um, and like we're connected in that like what I put out in the world impacts you. Like we're spending an hour together here, right? And like what I'm giving impacts you and what you're giving impacts me. And that way we're kind of all connected. Um and I think that's like it at the moment. I don't know. And I expect it to change. I expect it to grow and
Yeah.
change. But for right now, that's kind of where I land.
Yeah. And so, what brings you joy and peace?
Man, you have good questions. What brings me joy and peace? You should be a therapist. Have you considered that? I think just like spending time with like myself and like my own story. And maybe that's why like I really enjoy the Instagram account and the podcast and like just kind of like owning my story, like spending time learning about myself. Um, which before would have sounded so like self-centered to me, like in a bad way. And now it just feels like empowering, I guess. Um, yeah. And then like I guess on a not so deep level, what brings me joy and peace is like sitting at home with my cat who's like over on the bed behind me now. Um, and just like resting and like being able to just like I don't know, like take a breath and pet the cat. Like that's so peaceful to me. And and there doesn't have to be any greater meaning in it. There's no eternity that's
Mm.
depending on that moment.
Yeah. You can just be in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is
Mm.
peaceful.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been finishing all of these episodes with what would
Okay.
you say to someone who is fresh in their deconstruction?
To the person who is deconstructing, you are okay. You are you are going to be safe. You are going to be okay and healthy on the other side of this. It doesn't last forever in this way. Like it will last forever, but so much lighter. It will last forever in a way that you get to own, not in a way that owns you. And it will feel less all-consuming at some point, I promise. And you will learn to trust yourself, even though it feels really, really hard at the moment, and you are fighting a lifetime of learning that you can't trust yourself. Um, but you can and be kind to yourself when it feels like you can't. Like it'll be a back and forth for a little while, but you'll get there and you'll be okay.
Mm. It will get lighter. I love that. That's a really beautiful way to end it. I think I've not heard it put quite like that, but
Mm,
it will get lighter. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah. So so wonderful. And I can't wait to listen to more episodes. I love what you're doing here. This is so great. So thank
Thank-
you.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Surface. Until next time, take care, stay true to who you are, and remember, your voice and your story matters, always.